Okay, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your break. Just a little reminder that you will sign the sign-in sheets you should have signed when you came in this morning, and you'll sign again after lunch. So let's continue this wonderful instruction. Our next topic is turning tension into teamwork, practical conflict resolution skills. So in this session, we're going to talk about how to recognize the root causes of conflict, how to adapt our approaches to different personalities and situations, and use proven tools to de-escalate tension. So I'll welcome back Ms. Christel Slaughter. She is, if you're just joining us, she is the CEO at SSA Consultants for more than 30 years. She has led organizational change and planning efforts for hundreds of clients across the United States with a concentration of this work focused in the public sector. Please welcome Ms. Christel Slaughter.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. And I'm getting texts from people all over the state who are watching virtually, so be careful. I don't know if you all are on camera or not, but don't do anything you don't want recorded. So how many people in here don't like conflict? Yeah, there you go, right? Just to not have it. Yeah, go away, not have it at all. When you think about why you personally don't like conflict, it can be for a number of reasons. A lot of us are control freaks. I mean, just like, be honest with yourself, I want to do it this way because I have the authority to do it this way. That's part of my job. I ought to be able to do that. And now all of a sudden I have to deal with this conflict over here. What a pain in the neck. Some of us don't like conflict because we're not good at it. We never learned to be good at it. I was an only child, and so I didn't ever have conflict. I just sort of knew the boundaries and, would ask my parents, can I do this or that or whatever, and there was nobody to share with. Okay, that's a good learning skill. That's a life skill. I had to learn very late in life. When they took real Coke off the market, I hid it under my bed in my house because I had children who were drinking it. I mean, that's sick, right? That's addiction. I'll just say that's clearly what it was. Anyway, so if you don't know how to handle conflict, or you have a particular conflict style, resolution style that you like, and that doesn't work in all situations, and you try it and it doesn't work and the conflict's still there, it's really tough to deal with. I want to give you, in the next 55 minutes or so, some tips and tools and real practical strategies so that you can get good at resolving conflict. You have to be able to do that. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And the more stressful life becomes, the more complicated it becomes, the more you have to learn to resolve it. Easy fixes are not there. It's not a uniform population. We talked about generational differences. How about personal differences? You're going to have people in your workforce who are just starting out. They have a whole different set of problems from somebody who has children at home that they're worried about. They have parents that they're also trying to take care of. Maybe they're the primary caretaker and they have to get help during the day. I mean, people's lives are just really complicated and stressful. And the more stressed you are, the more conflict you will find yourself in. Because that sort of just is a catalyst. It just makes things bigger than they need to be. So I want to spend a few minutes with you talking about teamwork and how you don't want to avoid conflict, all right? I know a lot of people don't like it, but I will tell you that I've learned if you work through a conflict with someone and you really do work through it and you come out on the other side with a solution that you both support, you will have a much better relationship with that person. The more you ignore it, hope it goes away, the more tense it becomes. How many of you are married in here? You know who you are. Come on, a minute. Okay. You ever have one of those like sore subjects? Like, we've argued about it so much. I just hope it doesn't come up. I promise you it's going to come up. It's going to come up at the worst time. It'll come up over Thanksgiving dinner with relatives there. It'll come up in front of kids, friends that you don't want to have this conversation in front of. There's nothing that you sweep under the rug. That's a real important thing that doesn't come back up. So, feeling good about your ability to handle it. Maybe I am going to sweep it under the rug temporarily, but we're going to have to find some time to figure this out later on. Whether it's at home or work, the skill set is really, really important. So I'm going to give you a few tips about it. Know that it is inevitable, but it is how you manage it. And what you want to do is get really good at recognizing sort of the seeds of conflict, like the precursors, the things where you can say, aha, left to its own devices, this is going to turn into an issue. Maybe I can get in front of it. Maybe I can deal with it. There are so many sources of conflict in the workplace, whether we're in local government or not. But I did sort of a review of my own personal experience and some of our other consultants in our office. And we decided that these were kind of 5 general big areas that you can sort of count on, that if you have a lot of that, you're probably going to have more conflict than not. And if you have a lot of conflict in your particular department or area, I would really encourage you to start trying to unpack it and reduce it and deal with people who are the drama queens, the people, there are a lot of people and personality styles and organizations, but I sort of have a basic classification. There are some people who are fire preventers. They plan, they are planful people, they think ahead. They look out in the future, what's coming up. They might have a calendar. Here's what happens in this month, that month, this is when this is due. They're not perfect. They miss deadlines every so often. But they are ahead of the game. They're the fire preventers. And then you have the firefighters. And firefighters are people who come along and they didn't quite prepare for that. And they didn't see this coming. And now there's a fire. But boy, they come in and they take care of it. They are the brave. They rush in. They do damage control. And that's nice. I'd rather have fire preventers, but firefighters are great unless they started the fire. Those are fire starters, right? They are very difficult to deal with in organizations. They sort of thrive on conflict. They thrive on upsetting the status quo. And those are things that I think you want to try and predict, get in front of, help people figure out how do we get past this. So some of the sources of conflict that we have up here, I think you ought to be able to recognize. Role ambiguity and role confusion. I started my career at LSU in Governmental Services Institute. Somebody here attending's mom worked with me way back when. And we were sent in to do training and consulting projects for state government. It was a great training ground. And that's where I got the consulting bug, I'll be honest with you. As a project at the Department of Revenue, I'd never done consulting before. I was driving in a car with a senior colleague, and I said, how do I know what to do? He said, I'm just going to tell you, keep your mouth shut. That's how you know what to do. No matter what's in your head, don't let it come out of your mouth, because I'm just going to tell you, I don't think this project is this hard. And when you start hearing them describe it, you're going to know the answer. But this is only our first meeting, and we have a $53,000 contract. That was so much money back in the day. Oh my gosh. And he said, we don't want to solve it the first day because it's time-based. I thought, this is how you do consulting? Don't like that. That's kind of weird. If you know the answer, tell me the answer. Anyway, I didn't open my mouth. I did not open my mouth. The project was nothing but role ambiguity problems. People did not understand where their job ended and somebody else's job began. We didn't use the term back in the day, but people were all out of their lane. Everybody was in somebody else's lane, right? We say that now. We all know what that means. That's what that is. So when you observe a lack of teamwork, or you observe people sort of having tension in meetings and things like that, either you or somebody else needs to try and get to the root cause of it. Is it because you have somebody who thinks that's part of their job as well as somebody over here who thinks it's part of their job. Is there a way to clear that up? Is it a gray area? Is it something where they need the skills to communicate? They need to come together without you and work on that themselves. And it may be a reoccurring type of thing. Gone are the days when a job description is so good and so clear that everybody walks in, understands their role, we all go to work, nobody bothers anybody, we get a lot of work done. Those days are gone. We have so much gray in organizations today, and the more your people are trained to be change resilient and conflict resolution artists on their own, the more they can handle it without it always coming to you. But in the beginning, if they don't have those skills, it's going to come to you. And I will tell you, you can save yourself a lot of headache and heartache if you realize, okay, this one is getting out of hand. This one is starting to show, it's apparent to other departments. This is something that we're just going to have to sit down, either with both people individually, and work it out. You would be amazed at what bad judgment leaders have about things like that. People who want to, talk to one side, make a decision, and then it's done. I made my decision. Well, no, but you didn't fix the problem, right? There's a reason why there was conflict, confusion, some kind of ambiguity. Someone left, I picked this up. I was in a very small organization, part of local government recently. They had 5 or 6 people. They used to have 8 people, okay? That may not sound like a big deal. It was a big deal. One person left. They decided not to fill that position, so they redistributed her responsibilities. About 6 months later, somebody else left. Long-term employee, I think he retired. They decided not to refill the position. Well, you do that the 3rd time? People are so darn confused about who's responsible for this now, who do I call for this? I said, you need an organization chart with your 5 little people. And just like, what is in this person's bucket? What is in this person's bucket? So that people can refer to it. And you need to share it with the other parts of the organization, the larger organization, so they will know the same thing. Because they keep calling the wrong person, and that person is a helper. She's a doer. She does it, and then it makes this person mad because it's like, oh no, I'm responsible for that. We don't have time for that kind of stuff. So get the tools out, figure out how do we communicate that, and how do we deal with the confusion that's natural. I think that competing priorities and limited resources is one of the biggest sources of conflict in every governmental agency at every level. There's too much to do. There's not enough time to do it. I hate to say this, but the longer I'm around looking at organizations, you need to make hard calls. Go back and read enabling legislation. Go back and read your charter. Go back and read your plan of government. Whatever the documents are, bylaws, whatever it is, go back and remind yourself, this is what we're really here to do. And keep mission critical in your brain. We have a way of growing things in our organization. We have extra time and we take on more things. Well, now when you don't have the extra time and you don't have the extra money and you don't have the extra hands, what is it we really ought to be doing? If we could only do this, what will we do? In private industry, they have a profit motive, or they're supposed to. And so, when things aren't going well, there's a natural tendency to go back and say, what's our mission critical? What are our priorities? If we have to tighten the belt, what are things that we're doing that we may not be able to do? Service lines we need to get out of. That's not necessarily a natural activity in public organizations. And people stop questioning after a while. I'm going to encourage you to go back and question, because as we face, lower income, lower revenue streams, more challenging situations, the cost of everything is up, retirement systems, people, everything else you're trying to do, consumables, equipment, etc., you've got to really know what your priorities are. And so you will have competing priorities. That's a given. But I at least need to know when something shouldn't even be on the table, or we ought to sit down and think about that and talk about that. Maybe we need to give this to another agency. Maybe our Parks and Recreation ought to take this over. Maybe we have a nonprofit. Those are difficult conversations, but we're having them more and more with our clients because they have no choice. Now, once you sort of pare things down, you will still have limited resources and competing priorities. Now it becomes a policy decision. Now that's why you have leadership. You have an elected official, an appointed official. You need to know what their priorities are. And then we all need to follow and get behind that person and say, this is what this leader has told us are the priorities. And that forms sort of the pack if everybody understands and knows how we fit together to try and reduce conflict. But it's still going to be there. It's still going to be there. The next one is probably the one we think of the most. You know, we really don't communicate well. Human beings don't. I mean, we sort of think it's a natural skill. It's not. It's not. And I am consistently amazed when I'm talking to somebody, I realize they don't understand what I'm saying. I'm like, what's wrong with you, right? And then I realize, no, you're the sender. It's on you, not them. What is it that I said or didn't say or assumed that they knew that's not clicking? And so, you know, if you are the person trying to communicate, you got to look at yourself. You got to say, okay, let me make sure this communication doesn't break down along the way. In my new role at the city of Baton Rouge, they hadn't had a department meeting in a couple of months. And I said, let's have a department managers meeting because they have a tax election coming up. Do people know what they can do, what they can't do, what they can say, what they can't say? I was getting feedback from regular employees who were like, you know, I know this is important, but I don't know what I can say or not. At the parish attorney, he came himself. I was very impressed. Now, he brought help, but, you know, it's like, tell us, what are we allowed to do, what are we not? You know, is it different in fire and police? Is it different over here? Get people the information they need so that everybody hears it at the same time. If you do that, you have a better chance of everybody trying to hear the same message, and then you have fewer breakdowns going out. But personality clashes, you ever meet people you just don't like? Nah, right? I mean, like instantly, like, ugh, ooh, what is that? Wow. And this is the new whatever? And now we have to work with that person? Some of you work with boards and commissions. You get a new board member, you get a new board chair. Wow, that's an experience, you know. Some of you all have turnover frequently, and it's like, oh, this one's tough. Boy, don't you miss so-and-so. I mean, it's like you enshrine the ones that are easy to deal with. But you get what you get. People are people. And so rather than just shut down, turn off, you got to figure out how to work with these people. And some people have really challenging personalities. They really are. It's not made up. It's not in your head. It's not something when you go home and your spouse or children say, oh, come on, get over it. No, it's a real thing. Some people really, really are challenging to work with. But guess what? That's part of your job. It's part of your job to figure that out. It's part of your job to try and figure out how to build some kind of relationship, some sort of open communication with this person. And if that's not going to work, then what are we going to do about it? Because we're going to have to figure out, we're going to have problems all along the way. What do we need to do to minimize that? I think that in the public arena, political pressure and public perception can create a lot of conflict. And you will find that some people are highly excitable. I'm going to tell you with social media today, our jobs are very challenging in government. They're very challenging. And you can get someone who's a big influencer on social media, and you can watch what they're putting out, and it's totally wrong, and the worst thing you can do is respond or try and get other people to respond. I see a lot of nods in the head. I don't want to say the best thing to do is just not even read it, because some of it is legitimate. Some of it is good feedback. Some of it are opportunities to communicate better or talk about the why of what it is you're doing. But a lot of times you need to be able to say to your council watchers or board watchers or whatever, look down and see how many followers they have. If it's less than 20, they're just like trying to get your attention. You don't need to worry about that. When you look at the comments, if there's fewer than 10, okay. Do I really need to get that upset about it? But I have some clients, especially elected officials, who are uber sensitive to that. I mean, way out of the realm of where they ought to be. And I have to tell you, it is hard for their staff to kind of rein them in. It's hard for them to say, you don't need to overreact to that. You don't need to go out and explain yourself. We're going to make this worse. It is what it is. Let's try and create understanding. But the reality is, once you have public perception going a certain way, it takes a bit of muscle and effort to get it going a different way. So sometimes the best you can do is just say, let's go back to what it is we're supposed to be doing. Let's try and improve our brand. Let's try and improve our public perception. And over time, bring in people, help them understand what you're doing, and work through it. When you navigate through a political crisis or a media crisis, it can feel like the world is ending. I have to tell you, I feel for my clients that have to do that, and we try and help them the best that we can. But the reality is, you got to go through it. You got to go through it. We work with the state after they had the Bob Dean incident with the warehouse of death. When you unpack that, nobody did anything wrong. Nobody at the state did anything wrong. Everybody assumed, well, the Department of Health must be the regulator. No, not really. Not like you think they are. That's a local responsibility. That is a fuzzy accountability. It's like a gap in the law, a gap in regulations, a gap in accountability. And it just happened to have just seriously awful consequences. I have to tell you, being in the center of that, we did, sort of an after-action debrief, what could have been done differently. We published that. We helped our clients publish it. We worked to bring different sides of the equation together to talk about, do we need new legislation? Do we need higher regulations? If 99% of the people are doing things the right way and you happen to have one bad actor, do we change everything for that? I mean, these were heavy discussions with heavy consequences. But after it was all said and done, the agency was able to maintain relationships with state legislators, maintain relationships with elected and local officials, go back to some of the people who did not realize that was part of their job, that they really have regulatory authority that they didn't know about. It didn't change overnight, and it didn't make anybody feel better. I have to tell you, I had clients who cried every time we had a meeting. I can't believe this happened on my watch. I'll never forgive myself. I saw one of them the other day. I said, you're looking a lot better. That was a long time ago. She said, I never want to go through that again. It was the most horrible time of my life, and it was. It really was. But the reality is that you can only do what you can do. You do the right thing, you continue to try and do the right thing, and if public perception comes along and eventually you have other people, ambassadors who are saying, no, they did everything they could. They did what they were supposed to do. You can't say it yourself. You have to have other people who help you get out of that. The one that I think is the toughest is ethical concerns, and we link that with reform resistance. They can be two very different things. Let me talk about ethical concerns. When you have some sort of conflict, I want you to think about it as an iceberg, okay? So you have what's going on at the top. We have a difference of opinion and facts. We don't see the issues the same way. We had something that happened, and that's starting to create some conflict. We have different opinions. We talked about remote work. I think we should allow remote work. I think everybody should come back. I think we need one policy across the whole governmental unit. Whatever it is, that's an opinion. You can change your opinion. A lot of us fight strongly for our opinions, but the reality is that new facts, new data, being introduced to something working a little bit differently, well, I didn't think that was going to work, but it's working over there. Maybe we ought to try it. That's still conflict, but it's not as deep as our feelings, our attitudes, right? That entire group over there, their problems. We got kind of developed an attitude about them, right? That's a little harder to change. I've had experiences with it. I've had experiences with this issue. It's not ever going to get resolved. This is always going to be ugly. It's always going to be a tug of war. Okay, that's harder. That's harder. But I might be able to get people to loosen up. I might get people to sit together, to talk about things, to see the other side of the coin. Maybe we'll feel differently about it, maybe we won't. But the third one, your values. People quit their jobs over ethical concerns. I won't ask you to raise your hand. I know that there are probably people in here who've done that. I know you've probably had colleagues who've done it. I know you've probably watched other people who've done it. I hear it all the time. I had to leave. I couldn't keep doing that. It was wrong. I was being asked to do something that I didn't think was right. Whether I knew it was right or wrong, I don't know. It just didn't fit my values. And it can be small things. It can be big things. Sometimes people don't even realize that that's at the cause of their dissatisfaction at work. But when you have a difference in values, it is significant. And people have conflict and they hold to their positions like you would not believe. And so if you have conflict about values, that is going to be a serious conflict. I'll give you a funny example. When I was in college, I have two friends who I knew them both separately. They started dating. It was great. One was Jewish and one was Catholic. I just happened to know that because I knew them both. Well, they start getting pretty serious. They, were dating. They ran one another all the time. The girl's name was Kathy. And at one point she said, "Christel, I think we're going to get engaged." I said, "Oh, that is so wonderful." I said, "That's just fabulous. I'm so excited. This is just great. You're one of first in our group to get married. This is just so exciting." And then, I couldn't help myself. I said, "What are you going to do about kids?" She goes, "We're going to have them." I hope. I said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I mean, I just immediately went to that thought, right? You know what I'm thinking? You're a devout Catholic. He is a very, very generational Jewish family that's important to him. What are you going to do with your children? "Oh," she said, "I can't believe you're asking me that." I said, "I know, it's rude and I shouldn't, but what are you going to do?" She said, "Well, we talked about it. I think we'll do the first one Catholic. And then the next one we'll do Jewish. We might only have two." I'm like, "You're saying this with a straight face? How's that going to work, Well, they were in love. They were going to make it work. It was going to be great. It was going to be great. I can remember seeing her a few years after they had two kids. I said, "You remember that conversation we had before we got married?" I said, "What do you?" "Oh," she said, "we are so screwed up." She said, "It just didn't work out like we thought at all. It was like, you're going to this church, you're going to the synagogue, you're taking this one, you're taking that one. We were going to have Hanukkah and Christmas and everything." She said, "We just mush it all up. We just mush it all up, and we got two wonderful kids, and they are straight as an arrow, and they believe in God, and we're happy." And I'm like, what a great resolution. I mean, you made it work. But can you imagine if they had not thought that through and been each side willing to compromise? I mean, that's a deeply held belief. So you don't think you're going to get that in the workplace, but you really do. You really do. You get people where you're going to cut a program, and they are so deeply involved with veterans, with the seniors, with Head Start. How can we do this? I can't imagine this. This is a life rope. This is something that's important. Much less use of public money tax dollars, you can see some serious conflicts. And I will tell you, when they are values-based, you will have limited ability to resolve it. It will be much more tense and uncomfortable and serious than you think. So general literature says there's really 5 styles of conflict. And I want you to imagine a window, just a regular window with 4 panes of glass. And I want you to think about the skills that you need to be good at conflict, because each one of these 5 styles requires different skills. So let me tell you what I mean. If your vertical axis going up the window is your ability to state your position, how assertive can you be, or how important is it for you to assert your position? Some things may not matter to you. Well, I don't really care. This is a pain that they changed it, but we can convert it back. It's not a problem. Or is it, this is really important to me. This is an important thing, and I'm going to hold my ground. I'm going to be very assertive, okay? That's going to result in things like the competing style or the collaborating style, where I am looking for a win because it is really important to me. On the horizontal axis at the bottom, you have cooperativeness, okay? How much am I willing to give in? How much am I willing to have the other person have their way? How much am I willing to give up? And why would I ever give up, right? Why would I ever go along with something? Those of you who raise your hand that you were married, you know why you do that, right? It's social credit. Last Saturday, we did what you wanted to do. This Saturday, we're going to do what I want to do. Oh, you planned that in advance. So you're pretty smart, right? So we figure out how we accommodate or we avoid or we compromise because for the sake of the relationship. Now, what that does is it creates this window, if you can imagine that in your mind, and at the top, you have the winning styles, competing and collaborating. They are so different. They are absolutely night and day different. If you work with someone who sees everything as a win-lose, you are swimming with the sharks. And you better get in the game, and you better learn how to swim better, and you better swim away faster than they can find you, because they're going to go for the throat every time. It's in them. There are some people who are just built that way. They don't know how to give in. It's not in their nature. They're going to hold out for what they want. Now, that's great if it's important and they have information you don't have. But if that's just the style they're locked into, you better figure out how you find your voice, and in a meeting, privately, some kind of way, in a written form, you go fine. Well, look what it says in the plan of government right here, okay? That's why we have to do it this way, okay? They don't go along with it. There's usually higher levels, people who are specialists, auditors, attorneys. Let's go find somebody. Why did I bring the parish attorney in to talk about something? Because I didn't want somebody questioning me or anybody else. Let's go to the source. Let's get it right out on the table. Yes, no, you have a gray area, you have a question, let's get it out there right there. Because I know that there were people who very much wanted to say, go out and vote, and I knew there were people in the room who absolutely did not want even to talk about anything about an election or whatever. And somewhere people had to know what was the path that's legal, ethical, moral, and right for you. But again, if you have not learned how to hold your ground, when it is important, your agency will lose. The citizens who depend on you will lose. Bad guys might win because they scream louder, because they intimidate people, because they're bullies. I don't want you to become a bully. I don't want you to be like them. I just want to say, when it is important, and I will tell you, for those of you who are financially driven and have jobs that have to do with finances or any kind of compliance, you're the least likely to speak up. I do more executive coaching with engineers and financial people about how to speak up, about how to sit in a meeting with a lot of people who like to fill the air with their own voice. But you are sitting on a piece of information that nobody else has. It may be relevant, it may not. Don't talk yourself out of it automatically. Learn how to say, I think we ought to consider such and such. Learn how to say in an assertive voice and with facts behind you, you know it's going to come up. They need to know it. They need to be aware of it. I watch people all the time sit in meetings and let the conversation go, and then they get up and leave and say, you know, they're just not thinking about such and such. In 3 years, such and such is, I was in a budget meeting the other day with a client. The ARPA interest money is going to be gone. What are we going to do? I'm like, why didn't you talk about it while we had everybody in there? What a wonderful opportunity. Ooh, not me, you know. I'm just a whatever, fill in the blank. Doesn't matter, doesn't matter. You gotta be able to assert yourself when it is important. And lots of times, you know in your heart when it's important, right? So in order to be effective with the competing style, which you need in an emergency, which is what you need when something is really important, you have got to be assertive, not aggressive. A lot of the people you think about who use the competing style, they're in your face, they're aggressive, they're yelling, they're pounding on the table, they interrupt people. They are designing a scenario where they want to intimidate you. I don't want you to be like that. I want you to be able to say, I brought this along, I made copies, here's where it says this is the responsibility of... Okay, so, I won't sing, don't worry. Collaborating requires assertiveness too. You have to be able to say what's important to you. Now let me give you a little trick of the trade. When you are talking with a colleague or a non-colleague or whoever you're talking to, and they say, you want to know what the problem is? The problem is X. If the only solution to the way they have stated the problem is one thing, they're not telling you the problem. They're telling you their solution. They've redefined it as the problem. If you can't think of 3, 4, 5, 25, 30 different solutions, then you're not hearing the problem. You're hearing somebody who has thought about it, come up with this is the solution, and now they're trying to get you to go along with them by saying this is the problem. If you're a really good listener, and you're thinking about what people are talking about, and you pick that up, you'll be good at collaboration. Because you can help them figure out, well, I know that is important to you, but let's go back and really try and talk about what is the problem here? What is the problem? We have scarce resources, there's a lack of understanding, there's miscommunication. You know, what's really the problem? I'll give you a personal example. My husband needed a new car. At the time, he was working on projects that were on the West Coast, and I would drive him to the airport on Sunday and pick him up on Thursday night when he'd come back in. And this was going to go on for months, every week. We were in a hurry to buy the car. This is crazy. We didn't even go in daylight to look at the car. We went at night with a flashlight. We looked at stickers. We decided which car we wanted. He called the next day and bought the car. I don't recommend that to anybody, okay? Coincidentally, the car had electrical problems. I really don't think we would have caught that even if we had test-driven the car, which, what a novel idea. Like, been there in the daylight to open the door and see what it actually looked like on the inside. Anyway, the whole thing was a nightmare from day one. The electrical problem was such that I would roll the driver's side window, not roll it down, that's an old-fashioned term, right? I would press the button to electrically lower the window when I would drop him off at the airport so that I could pay to get out of the airport parking lot, and it would stick. It wouldn't go up, it wouldn't go down. It never happened to him. I actually asked him if I could watch how he did it, because I thought it was operator error. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. The darn thing sticks every time. Well, you know, it rains in Louisiana sometimes, and so the window's half down, and then I'm driving off, and now I got to figure out how to get it over to the dealership. They work on it. Sometimes it works when we get it back. Sometimes it doesn't. This goes on for about 3 or 4 weeks. And finally, I'm sitting outside the Baton Rouge airport for him to come out on a Thursday night. He is exhausted. He's been on a plane most of the day. I am fit to be tied with this window problem. I can't get it up. I can't get it down. He gets in the car, and instead of saying, "Hi, welcome home, it's great to see you," I say, "You need a new car." We have a problem. You need a new car. Was that our problem? No. It's Christel's solution to the problem. I don't like this car. Okay, we didn't even look at it in the daylight. I mean, now I got 50 things that we did wrong that I was complicit, oh, by the way. I'm like, yeah, we don't need to test drive it. Just get it. It's fine. We've been working with this dealership forever. Oh, I was in on all the things. I agreed to everything, but all of a sudden I have a convenient memory. Oh, I don't remember any of that. You know, I didn't want to go along with that. I didn't even think we need a new car. Oh, wrong. But as long as I say, you need a new car, there is nothing that is going to resolve the conflict in my eyes until we get a new car. Now, my husband was a smart man. He knew what he was doing. He had been a banker. I was never a banker. I still don't really balance my checkbook to this day. Anyway, he takes me to the dealership. And he says, "I know this car is only a few months old, but my wife would like to look at new cars." And I see the salesperson's face like, what? It's just a momentary look. He lets me look at cars, get the keys, drive a couple of cars. Bill says, "Pick out one you like." So I pick one out. We go in, we sit down, the desk, for the guy to write up sort of what it will take to get this new car. With a car that has depreciated, I don't know what the value is when you drive it off the lot, but like it wasn't worth anything like what we owed on it. And so when the guy wrote it up and extended it out 6,000 months, I don't know, it was the longest you could extend it out, it was larger than our house note. I was like, "What's wrong with this? Is this car that expensive?" He's like, "No, ma'am, you're paying for the car you are bringing back, and then you're paying for this car too." I'm like, "Why are we doing that?" My husband goes, "Because that's how it works, Christel." I said, "Well, this is a very bad idea. I love that car. Why are we here? Can you fix the window? Can we tried with you fixing the window? Do we have a lemon?" I'm looking for, now I have lots of alternatives. I'm not signing that thing that is like I'm gonna have to give a kidney to be able to afford this new car. I'm going to learn to love this old car and maybe try and get it fixed. Maybe we take it not to this dealership. Maybe we take it somewhere else. I was open to a lot of ideas. You don't always get that kind of opportunity. But when you're able to say, "Okay, that's the solution. Let's try going down that road and see where that takes us." And then somebody starts saying, "Wait a minute, that's not the only solution. That's not the only way to do this. I get it. I'm kind of locked into that. Let me open my mind." If you are a good listener, you will be able to listen between the lines with what they're saying and say, "You know what? They think this is going to solve all the problems, but it has its own set of problems. Maybe we ought to try other solutions. Maybe we ought to look at other things. Maybe we ought to think about this differently. Maybe we ought to go back and say, what is really the problem?" And if you get good at that, you will be good at collaboration. I know this isn't local government, but we talked about doing executive searches. I was doing an executive search, our firm was, for the Louisiana Housing Corporation. And we were hired. The agency was coming back after some troubles. People will do this. They could pull up board meetings, live stream on Google or YouTube or whatever, and they could watch people fight. I mean, it was a very entertaining, in a strange and morbid way, of watching grown-ups like just lose their minds and say things in public meetings. You could watch people resigning from the board right then. They hired us for this search, and then they said, "Do you think we can get good candidates?" And I literally said this in a public meeting. "Well, I think you ought to watch YouTube, because all of your national candidates will be looking at you on YouTube." And I remember some of them looking at one another like, "Oh, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot of trouble." We went ahead and did the search. We ended up with two very, very good candidates, both of whom were from Louisiana. Surprise. And one had direct agency experience with housing. The other one had higher level, different kinds of experience, but had a strong financial background, had worked in the housing industry in a different kind of way. They were both top notch, highly qualified. As a search consultant, you try not to get a favorite because it's really what the client is looking for. You're trying to show them you've done due diligence. This is what this one offers. This is what this one offers. But everybody's different, right? So they choose one of the people. And he's great. You know what he did first thing? He went out and hired the number 2 person, the number 2 candidate. Brilliant. It was brilliant. It's the smartest thing I've ever seen. There's a book about President Lincoln about bringing your enemies, and his team, it was a team of rivals. They have been rivals for the presidency. And he literally went and brought the people who had been their rivals in. I've seen it happen in local government too. It's rare. But I gotta tell you, you want collaboration? Get people around you who have different thoughts, different ways of thinking about things. Get them real close to you so you're not surprised when the public or somebody else comes up with something and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin with that. If you really get good at collaboration, you can rule the world because people will go along with your ideas. They feel empowered. They feel like they've been brought in. Even though my husband knew exactly what he was doing, he literally put the control in my hands for a few hours. Go ahead, live it up. Let's see what you come up with. I know how this story's going to end. We got back in the same old funky car with the funky window driving home, and I said, you had fun with this, huh? And he said, no, it wasted my Saturday. He said, but that's okay. That's okay. He said, you get it, right? You got to get the window fixed. I said, I get it. I got to get the window fixed. Or you can ride with Bob Pierce to the airport. How about that idea? There's a solution, and I can stay at home. Not a problem. There were lots of solutions at that point in time. Compromising is a very, very popular conflict solution in government, and I'm going to tell you why. You're dealing with competing priorities. You're dealing with other agencies, other departments. You don't have all the control. You don't need control to use the other styles, but sometimes it's just easy to find the compromise so we can move on. And that's a good use of compromise. I always think the legislative process is really a series of compromises. And if you're not doing it well, or you're doing it over the important things, it's going to come back to bite you, because it really is a lose-lose. The difference with collaboration is we find a solution that is 80% workable. It may not be the solution that I came in with, but we've come to an agreement. And when you have people who walk out and say, well, I'm surprised to say this, but you know what? I think we've come up with something and I think it's going to work. I'm going to try and make it work. That's so much better than voting, right? You got 10 people on an issue and you have 6 that vote yes, and you got 4 that vote no. The 4 that vote no don't necessarily walk out of the room and go, well, seeing as though how we're in America and majority rules and that's the way we run this organization, I know that I argued vociferously for 35 minutes against this, but now since one more person voted yes, and that's why it went yes, I am 100% behind it. No, they don't do that. They walk out and they give you malicious compliance. You know what malicious compliance looks like? It's like, well, I'm just doing what you told me to do. This is what you said you wanted to do. And I'm sorry it turned out that way, but you did tell me to do it that way. You voted. Look, I tried to tell you. I voted no. You voted yes. I knew this was going to happen. They don't say all that to you, but they're thinking it. They're thinking it, right? You know, if they have a chance and need to help you, they may or may not, because they don't feel part of it. They don't feel part of it. So a compromise is a way to get the trains moving again. But if it's important, it's going to come back around. It's going to open up again. It's not going to be a good solution. How many people in here are attorneys? Anybody admit it? I know some of you are, because I know who you are. Yeah? Okay. I actually had an attorney who was in a state government agency who told me the best she could do was a compromise. And I thought, I wish I had the time to really go through this and show you how that's not always true. But I do think that there are a lot of people where it's expedient, split the difference, you get this, you get that, we move on, and life is great. But it's not always great because some things in government need to have more permanence. And you don't want to change policy, programs every few years because we made a compromise here and now it's coming undone. The other side is now gaining force. They want to change it back. If there's any way to sit down and listen to people and try and help them come to some sort of resolution that would be more like collaboration, you got a much better chance of people supporting things long term. Now, you're not going to get 50 people to come to consensus. You need to figure out, can we form a committee? Can we get a task force? Can we get multiple task forces? Can we pull this apart? But I know some of you are in areas of the state where you have had enlightened leaders who have done things like that, and they end up with solutions that really make a difference. I've watched agencies in parishes along the eastern side of our state where they have brought together different agencies with funding streams and had them go back and dedicate their funding stream voluntarily to an economic development effort that they believe is important. It's a win-win-win. It's a win-win-win. And how does that happen? I mean, it's amazing when you see that happen. It happens because they had a seat at the table, and they had shared goals, and they were able to talk about what they wanted for the parish, and they had a strong parish president who he or she said, hey, what about if we could get this? Let's look at research. Let's look at what other places have done. Let's zoom in with some of these places who figured this out. And how do we get tourism up? And how do we get those sales tax dollars up? And all of a sudden, people opened their minds and felt part of it. It took a while. It didn't happen in one meeting. But the reality is, if you get good at moving from compromise to collaborating, you can get some real good things done. Now, avoiding sounds like you're turning your back on the conflict, and you are. But there are times when you should. There are times when you need to not get in the middle of something. It's not your fight. You're in a mayor's office, you're in a parish office, and there are subdivisions that are having altercations and conflicts and whatever. You may or may not want to get involved in that. You don't have to, everybody doesn't have to love one another. You're not their mama, okay? So sometimes you just may want to leave things alone and see if they can get settled. The same is true if you have a small work unit. You got people in the work unit who are having some conflict. You may not want to jump in right in the beginning because then they get dependent on you. And they want to pull you in every time they have some miscommunication, every time they have a problem. When I married my husband, he had 2 teenage boys. They lived with us. That was new. I didn't know clothes could stand up on their own in the corner because they had not been washed in 6 months. And they don't care. I did not know that you could buy a gallon of milk and open your refrigerator and it was all gone and there were no glasses in the sink. Did you drink out of the milk carton? No. Oh, it just magically disappeared. I bought magic milk. Okay. I did not know these things. I also did not know that fighting is like the way you act with your brother. And screaming and doing body thuds on the floor above your parents is normal activity. And I would have this going on. I would say, I'm going to go upstairs. And Bill would say, leave them alone. When you see blood dripping down from the ceiling, when you hear this blood-curdling scream, you think you heard that. That's not the blood-curdling scream. When they come downstairs and their arm looks broken, then it's time to get involved. Other than that, leave them alone because they really would love to have your attention. That would introduce a whole new thing in there, and you will never get out of it. And they will be tattling on one another back and forth, back and forth. Oh my God, he was so right. You know, one day I just thought, I can deal with this, right? Oh, wrong. It was a new game. I was in the game. I was bombarded with tattling. My brother did this, he did that, he broke the lamp. You know, he wasn't even home. The lamp broke itself. I don't know. I mean, whopper tales. Years later, after they went to college, we were sitting watching television, and I looked at the door jamb, and I said, Bill, do you think the house is settling? Look at the door jamb. And he got up, and he went and looked at it, and he said, this is no longer attached to the wall. I mean, they were out of the house. They had not been in the house for a long time. And he called the one most likely to tell the truth. Like, they were both questionable, but one was more likely to tell the truth. He said, Michael, he said, your mother and I were just looking at the door jamb in our bedroom. Michael said, it wasn't my fault. Now, he is a grown man, just about. It wasn't my fault, okay? So what happened was, Will was wearing socks, and he was chasing me, and I went in your room, and I slammed the door, and he slid into it, and the whole door jamb and door fell in. Can you imagine? It had happened years before. Years. I thought, I can still punish you. You know, I can cut off the money. That's how you do it, right? There are some times when you just need to let it go. It's also a good idea to let it go when it's a growing development opportunity. Somebody comes to you and says, hey, you know what? We're gonna do this major project, and I have a different way of doing it. I have a really good idea I came up with, and here's how I think we ought to do it. And you're listening to it, and you're thinking, oh, I've tried that. That is a really bad idea. That is not going to work. That you're going to get about halfway through, and it's going to be a mess, and you're going to be sorry you did that. And you know all these things, but you say, okay, come back and tell me how it goes, right? Because you want them to have the experience of going through something and realizing what you already know. Now, not if it's a risk, not if it's going to cost a lot of time or money, but if it's something where they're going to learn a little bit from failing, that's not a bad idea. I don't want to save them from everything. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room all the time. And guess what? It might just work for them. Maybe it didn't work for you, but it might work for them. So maybe I ought to just kind of step back and say, let me let you kind of go out there and do it on your own. And then there's accommodating. That's the social chit. That's the thing that you use when you want to build a relationship, okay? This isn't really that important to us, but it's really important to them. So let's throw them a bone. Let's try it. Let's do it their way. Let's accommodate them. Let's do this because in the end, I think it's going to work out better for all of us. You want to be able to use all of these. You want to be able to say which one fits best in the situation that I'm in. And if you're able to do that, and what you need to do is pause and probe. Let me not go to my natural inclination. Let me step back and kind of look at the whole situation, think about it. Let me try and understand somebody's position. Do we have shared interests? I'm only going to get to a collaborative solution if I'm able to do that. Can I de-escalate? Can I not use the language that sort of inflames everybody? Instead of saying you, just take that and you always, you never. These are like fighting words, okay? Take them out of your vocabulary. Let me talk about, I need to understand. Can you help me understand this? Can you explain this to me? Can you listen to sort of what I'm thinking as we're doing this? And then try and focus on facts and shared goals. If you can get to the point where you find some way that your goals mesh together, I promise you you're that much further along for a solution. So going back to what we talked about, clear expectation, how we're supposed to communicate, some norms around that, no surprises. No surprises, okay? Government doesn't do well with the surprise. Let people feel that you're approachable and you want to hear them. And then do some debriefs. What have we learned from this situation? What would we have done differently? Make it a safe space for people to talk about it. And then when you see collaboration and you see people coming together to solve problems, always say thank you. Thank you for your attention, those of you virtually, those of you in the room. You've been delightful. I've been so pleased to be with you this morning, and I'll see some of you this afternoon.